So, Susan Kleinberg, Emma Kleinberg's grandmother, did you feel when you were protesting the Vietnam War and the civil rights movement, fighting with for the civil rights movement, that the authorities were irresponsible with your First Amendment rights?
On the whole, we were people who were in authority were suspicious of those of us who publicly protested against the war and publicly protested in favor of civil rights, particularly for people of color and for women. The process by which they used their authority was to set a lot of very rigid standards of where we could demonstrate, how many people we could have, the size of our signs. This was their way of trying to intimidate us, to keep us, quote, in line, and to avoid having us take action that they thought might be dangerous. But we were never violent. We were always nonviolent.
Do you have an example of something like that?
An example of something like that would be a time in which we were demonstrating and marching against a group that against the war in Vietnam, and a large group of veterans who were angry at us started to march next to us and block us. And instead of the authorities protecting us because we were peacefully demonstrating, they actually let them get in line so that they were walking with us and next to us and yelling at us as we were walking down the road in front of the Washington Monument toward the Capitol building.
Did you feel intimidated when that occurred?
I felt intimidated. I felt anxious. I felt often during those situations that if I didn't do everything right, I might be ending up either in jail. I did not personally get into any demonstrations in which tear gas was thrown, but a number of my colleagues were in those kind of situations, and tear gas was thrown into large groups of demonstrators without them having done anything dangerous or illegal as a way of intimidating them.
You mentioned an example where a professor was going to stand up in protest and leave a meeting, and you had an interesting example that occurred then. Can you
What happened is the president at the time, Lyndon Johnson, was speaking at a college honorarium ceremony in Rhode Island, and one of the professors who was very opposed to the war and opposed to Johnson's escalating the war, in fact, decided to stand up and walk out in the middle of the speech that the president was making. It was not meant to be illegal. It was not meant to be a threat in any way to the President of the United States. It was simply meant to be a public statement of protest.
And you had mentioned that the authorities got wind of this?
And the authorities got wind of it, and what they did was get someone dressed as a nurse to walk down the aisle, and when he stood up to protest, this woman grabbed his arm and led him out of the room and out of the hall, making it look as if he was a medical problem as opposed to a public protest.
Keep going.